East Palestine, Ohio, and surrounding communities are being hit by disaster. A Norfolk Southern train of 150 cars has had a 50-car derailment in the middle of East Palestine, Ohio. Emergency crews conducted a controlled burn of the spill on the request of state officials, which released hydrogen chloride and phosgene into the air. Apparently, the train was spotted on camera on fire 20 miles before it derailed. Residents were urged to evacuate at first, as there were fears of explosions. Then, residents were told it was okay to return home on the 15th, less than 2 weeks after the burn. The train was set to be a controlled burn so as to prevent a catastrophic explosion. The chemicals have killed several animals and have made people sick, given people severe headaches and sore throats, and burned their eyes. And they say it smelled of paint thinner in the air, among other things like nail polish remover. The chemical spill did reach the Ohio River, potentially affecting 25 million people. According to the EPA, contaminants were low enough that the river diluted them. Downriver communities are allegedly not at risk. The freight train came in from Illinois, which was carrying the dangerous and deadly chemicals. 50 cars went off the tracks in East Palestine. Governor Dewine made the decision to vent and burn the chemicals to prevent the catastrophic explosion. According to a report, the derailment could have been caused by an overheated wheel bearing. Norfolk Southern is the one responsible, more than likely, because it was their train. They're the ones currently paying for the cleanup and cutting people $1,000 checks for displacement from their homes. One woman that I have heard of so far went back to her house and she was told by Norfolk Southern that her home was deemed unsafe to return to. Associate professor from the University of Pittsburgh School of Public Health, James Fabasiak, says in the early days after the derailment, which happened February 3rd, the focus was primarily on the vinyl chloride, which has significant long-term chronic implications, and that's in part one of the reasons, as well as the risk of an explosion, that a controlled burn was actually conducted to try to mitigate some of that. Obviously, some very toxic things could have produced in that burn, but the sort of short-term evacuation was a way to sort of mitigate that. However, we have more recently learned that there are additional chemicals, butyl acrylate, which is one of them, and there are some others that weren't necessarily talked about in those first days. It's not clear whether Norfolk Southern did not tell the EPA or if the EPA was not paying attention to them. We need to think about the mixture of chemicals that are in the ground and water and what the long-term implications of that may be. There have been more than 3,500 dead fish confirmed to be in the water so far as of a couple days ago, and that's in one 7.5-mile stretch of water. There was one family that had to put their beloved cat down because of the spill and had some liver issues. There have been other reports of rescue animals and other animals dying too, like foxes, chickens, hens, cats, fish, and other animals that have been injured, like dogs and other animals that we know of so far. I heard there was a dead deer, but it wasn't clear how the deer actually died. The right chemicals must be measured in the right place at the right time and in the right way. Governor Dewine says the chemicals are continually being monitored and tests are continually being done to monitor the air and water. Residents in a 2-mile radius were forced to evacuate. A lot of their properties have not been tested, and residents are scared. The chemicals can be deadly if breathed in for too long and are known to cause cancer. People are scared to even shower, let alone cook with or drink the water. Federal officials say the derailment of 50 cars of the 150-car train that burst into flames of up to 100 feet high upon derailing, which was carrying materials that created a fireball when they were released and incinerated, it is not being regulated as a high-hazard flammable train. So this train was not considered a high hazard. a high-hazard flammable train. This train that burst into a giant fireball and caused an entire town to evacuate was not considered a high-hazard flammable train. That's a problem. Emergency crews conducted a controlled burn of the spill on the request of state officials, which released hydrogen chloride and phosgene into the air. I am hearing this train broke down days before it crashed in East Palestine. I don't know if that's true, but I have a feeling there's going to be some lawsuits coming for Norfolk Southern, and in fact, I found there already are. Local fox and chicken owners have reported their animals getting sick and sluggish, losing feathers, and dying since the derailment, although officials are saying it's safe. Some animals were fine that day, then dead by the next morning. Ohio Humane Society officials are being flooded with sick animal calls. The train was carrying 20 cars of toxic materials that the governor said he was not made aware were coming through his state. Families feel they have been through enough. Some people have to pay for food and hotels, being displaced from their homes, and are now paying vet bills that didn't have extra money to begin with. The Humane Society says animals are being brought in sluggish and lethargic and visibly ill, some not surviving. Some chickens and dogs have chemical burns. Miss McGuire of the Humane Society urges people to get a necropsy done on their animals to determine the exact cause of death. In the wake of the derailment, many people were reporting suffering severe headaches and being nauseous, as well as sore throats and burning eyes. Don't tell me it's safe. Something is going on if the fish are floating in the creek, Kathy Reese, who lives in the area, told WPXI Pittsburgh. Reese said she saw dead fish in the stream that flows through her backyard. Another local resident, Jenna Giannios, said she is drinking bottled water and has developed a cough since the controlled burn. She says it's just a mess, and she is concerned with the long-term health impact. The National Cancer Institute has previously linked long-term exposure to vinyl chloride with forms of liver cancer, brain, and lung cancers. The train cars were also carrying butyl acrylate, ethylene glycol, monobutyl ether, ethyl acrylate, and isobutylene, all of which carry health risks, according to a report from the EPA. The National Transportation and Safety Board said Tuesday that it will release a preliminary report on the disaster in 2 weeks. The immediate area was evacuated due to the release of vinyl chloride and hydrogen chloride. Though the Ohio Department of Agriculture has not received any official reports regarding the wellness of the animals related to the incident, they're assuring Ohioans its food supply is safe and the risk to livestock is low. The Greater Cincinnati Waterworks issued a statement saying, although chemicals leaked into the Ohio River, it will likely have no impact on its drinking water for its 1.1 million customers. Though residents remain skeptical and say there isn't enough being done and it wasn't taken seriously at first, there were no updates for the days and only 3 updates so far as safety. The water test results have come in and there has been no vinyl chloride detected in the water. Does this mean it's safe to be breathing in the air and consuming the water in case of other contaminants that we're unaware of at this time? Why did so many animals die and become ill or burnt? What about them? Why is Norfolk Southern giving people only $1,000 checks to keep them from suing? I believe I would be suing if I had the money for a lawyer. That's just me. The tests were done on raw and treated water. East Palestine Village's 5 wells are about 1 mile from the derailment site. They're more than 50 feet below ground and covered by a solid steel casing to protect them from surface contaminants. The water from those wells is combined at the village's treatment plant before it reaches residents' taps. Residents are outraged and are demanding answers over the train derailment.
From the railroad and the Biden administration were noticeably missing from last night's boisterous. Hundreds of furious Ohio residents demanding answers about the safety of the air and water following that toxic train derailment 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Now, this is from Fox News. It's outraged Ohio residents erupt at town hall. Where is Pete Buttigieg? Buttigieg. I don't know how to say his name.
But officials from the railroad and the Biden administration were noticeably missing from last night's boisterous town.
Officials from Norfolk Southern and the Biden administration were missing from this. What? This is the first time I'm listening to this, guys, with you.
Hall, and the city's mayor says Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg did
not
show.
Lucas Tomlin.
Buttigieg did not show.
Sun is live from East Palestine with the latest for us. Lucas?
Well, good morning, Steve, Brian, and Ainsley. I'm outside East Palestine High School and Middle School where we've seen students filing into school. The schools have been open here in town since Monday. But last night you mentioned a contentious town hall meeting, which one of your guests a short time ago said it resembled.
So schools, they were out of school for like a week and a half, I think.
More of a town hall nearly 2 weeks after that massive train derailment here in Eastern Ohio along the border with Pennsylvania.
So this is in Eastern Ohio along the border of Pennsylvania. It's a couple hours from where I live, but it's close enough that people are saying not to go out in the rain. So that's a concern.
Officials from Norfolk Southern Railway declined to attend, citing their safety. Many residents demanding, where is President Biden's transportation secretary?
Where is President Biden's transportation secretary and why are they not here? Like, do they not care? This is a huge disaster. This is historical. Mayor Trent Conaway is basically saying he can't handle this on his own. He needs help. And then Norfolk Southern doesn't even bother to show up. Yesterday was the first time he heard anything from the White House. That is pretty sad. This was yesterday, so that would have been 2 days ago. This footage is from February 3rd, which is the day that the train derailed.
Many residents in this small town of roughly 5,000 people say they're still feeling sick from the toxic chemicals released from the train.
But it's supposedly okay to be there, right?
I wake up every day. I've been sick with my upper congestion. This morning I woke up with my eyes swelled.
My kids, we're just running in to grab something, and then we're going back to Grandma's house because they keep breaking out in rashes.
Kids do.
Yeah.
Wow, you guys, this is huge. These people are probably scared because they're being told by somebody that they're supposed to be able to trust, hey, if it were me, I'd go back home, but still drink the bottled water. Like, okay, so you're saying there could be issues, but there's probably not. It should be fine. That's not okay that our governor is handling it like this.
I work by the rail track. I have experienced headaches and coughing.
I try not to go outside because every time I go outside, my throat gets scratchy.
I have sore throat, headaches. My husband still has a headache.
Wow. So people are all over that town being affected by this. And I'm hearing reports of people that live like several miles away, but still in the region being affected as well. And people that aren't even in the same town that live like 20 miles away being affected and seeing dead fish in their streams. And yeah, so it's not just that town. It's more places in Ohio that are further away than you would think.
Ohio Governor Mike Dewine says the water is safe to drink here in town after tests came back negative, but he encouraged residents here to still drink bottled water and avoid the tap. Many residents say they're still scared.
I'd still be scared too, especially if the governor was like, it's probably fine.
My biggest concerns is ultimately the drinking water, the effects of the drinking water. And
I feel like they have.
Not to mention the soil, like there's a lot of people there, especially just in Ohio in general. There's a lot of farmers, lots of farmers, okay? Especially in that area. there's lots of crops and there's lots of soil that is relied on for our food and for the livestock. And that is a huge concern of mine.
Haven't been truthful with us. I just worry about especially
Effects of the drinking water and
I feel like they haven't been truthful with us. I just worry about especially
the effects of the drinking water and
I feel like they haven't been truthful with us.
That is so sad, you guys. These people feel like they're being lied to.
I just worry about especially the kids, the young mothers, the pregnant mothers.
Yeah, no kidding. What about breastfeeding mothers and people that have newborns and pregnant people that are using this water? Is it going to affect a little baby?
Biggest concern that I have is with dioxins. Nobody's even talking about dioxins in period.
I don't even know what that is, man.
East Palestine's mayor appeared overwhelmed while speaking to reporters after the town hall last night.
I'm not ready for this.
See, he just said it right there, and I've never even seen this. He said, I need help.
I wasn't built for this. I always thought of myself as a leader of men.
Even the mayor is saying he feels like they haven't been truthful.
And I have the village on my back, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I'm done playing games. They're not playing games either. It's not he said, she said. They screwed up our town. They're going to fix it.
That's right, man. They screwed up your town. They better fix it.
President Biden's EPA chief is due here in town at roughly 12:30 to survey the damage and speak to locals right now. He appears to be the face of the federal response, guys.
You think they would have came a while ago. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. When did you find out, Lucas, that the Northern Southern representatives would not be there?
We found that out shortly before the town hall last night. Brian, it's interesting that we just spoke to some of the residents here in town, asked them, do they feel safe? They said if they're dropping off their kids here at school and the school's open, some of them feel safe. But certainly, as you just heard, many residents of this small town in eastern Ohio are very scared right now. And the Ohio governor is telling them, it's not even safe to drink the tap water right now. Even with the negative test, he encouraged them to drink bottled water.
But yet, the governor is saying if it was him, he would return home. But would he, though? Would you, Mike? If that was you, would you return home, sir?
Because how far are you from where they did the controlled burn?
Because I don't know if I would be able to, depending on how close I was. Because, hello, the children don't need to be breathing that stuff in. That's terrifying. I can't imagine if I had a newborn or something. Oh my gosh, if one of my animals died, or one of our many rescues died, oh, I would just be heartbroken. Because, okay, I'm sure many of you know what I do for a living. Maybe many of you don't, but I take care of right now we have about 41 cats. One of them has to get put down tomorrow because it has FIP and it's really, really sick and suffering, and it's really sad. But we'll go ahead and bury her out in the horse pasture like we do when they pass. All of them get taken to the vet regularly, get checkups. A lot of them, they're all rescues, and a lot of them were sick and have medications that they have to be administered on a daily basis. There's like a sick turtle, there's a parakeet that has to have constant attention, that's always making noise, that you have to keep the dogs away from. And, they have a lot of special needs, and there's a lot of feeding, and there's a lot of outside animals too, like coons and possums and stuff, and geese and all kinds of things that we have to keep the yard very cleaned up for. And since it's so out in the country, it's not that hard to do. It's not like there's a bunch of litter or anything like that to worry about, or children's toys or anything like that we have to worry about getting messed with, which you'd be surprised what some geese and raccoons can do to some flower beds and stuff, let alone if you leave like children's toys outside, or you'd just be surprised, okay, when you get that many of them together. They're little rascals. And I have a huge heart for animals because of what I do. And there's a lot of care that goes into it, and there's always something to do. There's always an animal that needs petted or loved on or cleaned up after or fed or given medicine or whatever. There's loads and loads by the truckload of litter to be unloaded, of cat food, dog food to be unloaded that comes in as donations from the Humane Society that is very, very much appreciated. I don't know what we would do without that, but enough rambling about my work. I just wanted to point it out because I have a huge heart for animals, and I feel like this is a huge disaster that the animals aren't going to get justice. Nobody's seems worried about the animals. The governor didn't even address the animals that are dying, and a spokesperson for Norfolk Southern said they have no evidence of anything besides fish being affected. Hello? How do you explain all these animals dying the day after this train derails and having chemical burns? Come on, get real. Like, that's a coincidence?
And can you still smell like an acrid or chemical smell in the air?
It's the first thing I thought of when I drove in here. I did not smell that, Steve. We were only about a couple miles from where that massive train derailment took place, spewed those toxic chemicals. You know, it's been about 2 weeks. It'll be 2 weeks.
Though people were saying they smelled acetone and paint thinner.
Friday from that February 3rd derailment took place about 9 p.m. It was actually a Norfolk Railways train that was going from Illinois to Pennsylvania. It was moving eastward. It was 32 November was the train name, the freight train. But right now the air, it does not smell toxic right now. But certainly the concern right now is more the water, guys.
Sure, absolutely.
The water and the soil. And I'm sorry, but how is there no risk to the livestock in the area?
Thank you, Lucas.
How do they even know that yet? How can they come out and say that for sure?
And one of the concerns with the water is, keep in mind, after they had the burn, apparently what we've heard from the people on the ground there is they didn't remove any of the soil, they just buried it. So in other words...
So they're not removing the soil like Dewine's saying, like the governor is saying. He's saying they're removing all the soil and getting rid of it. Well, what are they doing with it? Where are they putting it? Isn't it still toxic? And this guy's saying they were just burying it.
So the worry is, over time, will water go down to the groundwater? And will there be some sort of long-term problems?
Which is like what happened with
Exactly.
what is her name? Julia Roberts played her part in that movie, Erin Brockovich.
Yeah.
And this happened. She lived out in California. Exactly. And she was able to prove it. There was a huge lawsuit. They ended up settling, and I think that they settled for $333 million. Some went to her, some went to her attorney, and all of the people that were affected. But she is now an environmentalist and has come out as the whistleblower and speaking on behalf of a lot of these individuals. And she was saying the White House needs to come out there and talk to these individuals.
The White House should come out and talk to these individuals.
Some of them.
They should come out and do a press
One
conference.
lady made a good point. She said,
this should be a federal thing.
if Norfolk Southern was too scared to go there last night, they were concerned for their safety, why didn't they Zoom? Why didn't they get online and take some of these questions?
Right. Why didn't they just do that? If they couldn't be there in person, they could have at least communicated in one way, shape, or form, right?
Here are some of these residents that we've talked to.
We could feel, our eyes burning, and, we could feel like our skin, our exposed skin, kind of burning.
You just got to be careful. You're hearing something new every hour. Another pet's getting sick, lethargic, throwing up. We had a horse come down ill.
I don't think a lot of people.
Wow. That's the first time I've heard that there was a horse that came down ill. You guys, this is intense.
Got the answers that they were looking for. There wasn't.
My question is, how could it have been prevented? Like, because I'm hearing that there is just a lack of employees to, or the train would have been checked more thoroughly, and maybe the problem would have been fixed if there would have been more employees. But because of railroad cuts and pay cuts, people have been, employees have been minimized, and work's not getting done that should be getting done. So then don't run the trains then. Like, good God, look what's happening. Get it together, Norfolk.
Representation from Norfolk Southern. It really starts with that railroad company taking ownership and dictating in a really positive way how they could impact this community versus where it looks like they're leaving them now.
Yeah, because it looks like they're just leaving them because they didn't even show up to the press conference that they were supposed to be at.
Right, and they're nowhere to be found.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. They went on to say Norfolk Southern didn't show up. They don't want to hear it. They said they're going to
And they're getting lawsuits already.
be there, but where are they? They said the security was threatened. Unfortunately, after consulting with community leaders, we have become increasingly
Their security was threatened? How?
concerned about the growing physical threat to our employees and members of the community around the event. The police force would have been there fine. They could have postponed it in a couple hours. You would have been fine. They just don't want to hear it. They don't want the optics.
Right. They could have done a lot to prevent some security breach. Like they could have just had the police come. There was probably already police there.
A bunch of working class Americans sounding off saying, "Why have you poisoned me?" And also the governor, Dewine, as well as Congressman Bill Johnson, 2 Republicans. They have to raise hell. They have to make sure that the President of the United States is forced to comment on this, and the Congress is forced to act on this, and the Transportation Secretary does something he hasn't done since he got the job, and that's do his job. You don't
Wow. You can see where this news channel stands.
have to be an expert, but you got to be around the people that are experts and execute some type of plan. Not showing up and promising equity for construction jobs that haven't started yet is not a good plan.
Or Pete Buttigieg tweeting out 10 tweets the other day, and it was all about blaming Trump for this. We have this new infrastructure bill that is going to make our trains safer. That's not what they want to hear. They want to hear, are we safe now? What happens in a few?
Right. That's what everyone wants to hear. Are we safe now? Exactly. Because from what I'm hearing, it don't sound too safe. I mean, you don't just have a bunch of animals die for no reason. Usually, if it's something that's going to kill an animal, it's not something that's safe for us. You know what I'm saying? You're going to tell me this is safe to be breathing in? Look at that. That's crazy. Look at that. It's just unbelievable. It's just like in the movie White Noise, a guy from this town, East Palestine, he lived here, and he said he was one of the people that had to evacuate. And it's crazy because he played an extra in the movie in some scene where he had to evacuate from a train derailment. It was like the same thing that happened in the movie happened to him in real life. How crazy is that? Can't remember the guy's name. Nana's Angels. Sorry. She did a video on it. You'll have to check it out. It's pretty crazy. Look at that, man. And they're supposedly just going to come in and dig up all this soil and get rid of it. But from what I'm hearing, what that guy said on the news, they're just burying it. Which, how is that a solution? I mean, I'm not a scientist. I don't know how this stuff works, but that doesn't sound like a good solution. Look at that. All right. I'm not going to keep you any longer. Norfolk Southern faces federal lawsuits over Ohio train derailment 21 hours ago. Class action lawsuits against them for long-term health effects of the train derailment. At least 5 lawsuits have been filed in federal and county courts against the rail company. So, the suits claim Norfolk Southern was negligent and careless with transporting a dangerous chemical. Wow. Yep. Another lawsuit has been filed in Columbiana County Common Pleas Court. The suit claims Norfolk Southern was negligent and careless in connection with the train derailment, resulting in toxic chemicals dispersing into the atmosphere and environment. Attorneys expect all the lawsuits to eventually be merged into a single class action lawsuit. A spokesperson for the railroad company declined to comment on the pending litigation. All right, that's all.